Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Diane Grace, a fellow adoptee and an author and an all-round good egg. Welcome to the show, Diane.
Well, thank you so much, Simon. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah. So I asked Diane how she was doing before we started recording, and she said, fabulous. And I said, look, don't be over the top, right? Don't be over the top here. I'm from the north of England. We have a case. Our standard answer in the north of England to "How are you?" is not bad, not bad. So don't be too much, Diane. Don't be too fabulous.
Okay, I'll try to tone it down.
hide your light hide your light under the bushel. Okay. Just tone it down. No, I'm joking. So we're going to talk about three things today. And funnily enough, this is the title of Diane's book. Okay. And Diane's book is called Faith, Hope, and Perseverance. And I just thought, what brilliant things, right? Faith, Hope, and Perseverance. And what a great title for a podcast, and what a great potential subject for discussion. So how did you come up with that title, Diane?
Well, that's a great question, Simon. My faith has always driven me, especially through my journey to finding my biological family. I always knew that if I kept my faith in God, that He would show me exactly what I was looking for in my journey. It just happened to take a little bit longer than I thought it would, but my faith really came through, and every question I could possibly come up with has been answered because I held on to my faith and kept my faith in my heart.
Wow.
So that's how that came about. That was the first word that came to my mind when I was thinking about a title, was faith.
Yeah. So was it like a cosmic fax or a cosmic email, this idea of faith?
Oh, yeah. It was like a God moment, you know? It was very strong. It was very intense. And actually, I really honestly believe in my heart that God spoke to me and said, you need to write a book about your journey and what has happened to you.
Yeah.
And I'm, first off, I thought, this is a little crazy. I had never dreamed about writing a book ever in my life. I didn't know where to start, but I had a very good friend that helped me and kind of showed me and steered me in the right direction.
Yeah. So I could take a kind of a non-God view go at faith for people who are less religious that listen, right? I could do that, but I was thinking, well, why don't I ask you? Could you take would that be possible for you? Could you take a non-God view at what faith is to people that aren't religious? Would you be up for doing that?
Well, I think having a positive attitude has a whole lot to do with it. I was really headstrong in everything I did, but my faith really came to the surface and every time when I started to doubt something, and it just held fast. But I think for someone who is not really into religion, you've got to hold on to something. You've got to keep you've got to believe in something. There's some kind of a power or something that's going to drive you to find the answers that you're looking for.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll take a go at a non-God view of belief. With a little bit of a strange take on it. Looks pretty. Yeah. So this is a book. I do occasionally talk about it on the show, and I've just forgotten the name of the book. So there you are. That's a good one. But basically, it's about a guy who becomes an adrenaline junkie, and then he becomes a junkie. He becomes an addict. And he becomes an addict because he's addicted to adrenaline, and he wants to see what it's like coming off heroin. So I told you this is a bit of a weird one. So the book's called High Risk. I've just been looking at it on my my Audible playlist, and it's by a guy. What's it called? What's the guy called? I can't remember. It's called Tim something. Okay. And so he tries heroin for 2 weeks to see what it's like coming off it. And 5 years later, he comes off it. 5 years later, right? He comes off it. And he comes off it, and it's like an 8-hour book. And there's one sentence that describes how he comes off it. And it's when he realizes that he is bigger than his addiction. So there's something bigger than his addiction, and he is it. So there's a higher power within him. He is if he was a religious guy, he would maybe have that epiphany moment where he sees himself as a child of God. There is God is within him, and that power gave him the impetus to stop using. So belief in a high power, belief in a bigger version of ourselves, belief in a bigger version of ourselves than our puny little ego mind.
Yeah.
That would be kind of my take at what faith is about, and it's a seeing thing, right? So it's a seeing thing, or it's a hearing thing. You said God spoke to you, right? This guy, something spoke to him. He heard something, saw something new. He had an insight, and that changed his world. That changed his that was the end of his addiction. And I'm going on quite a little bit, but does that make any sense to you?
Yes, it does. Yes, it is. And if it doesn't matter if you believe in God, it's like what you just said. There's a higher power within everyone, I believe, and it's just if you choose to listen to it, or if you choose to ignore it, that's up to you. But if you listen to it, some pretty cool things can happen.
Yeah. So that's an interesting one, really interesting one for me. But I want to go back to something that you said, which was you had this, God spoke to you, a higher power spoke to you and said, write a book about this journey. And then maybe this thought came in straight after that said, this is crazy. So, we've had this, you've had this huge, like epiphany moment, this insight, this God speaking to you. And then our little puny ego mind jumps in straight after the fact we've had, you've had a great idea, and it tries to knock you off the course that God was sending you on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it did. I hate to say that I doubted what I heard, because there was no doubt in what I heard. It was a very strong and very clear message, and the message had a purpose. I didn't know the purpose at that time. I've learned it later, and it was like, okay, I get it now. I get it. I know why I'm writing this book. It was about halfway through writing the book that I realized, okay, it's not just me. This book isn't about me, because it's just kind of a story, but it can inspire someone who has been in the trenches of trying to find their biological family, is to get these answers that they deserve to have, and to help find those missing pieces of the puzzle of their life. And if I could inspire just one person to keep going. It took me 50 years, Simon, to find mine. Okay, that's a long time.
Sorry,
But
you
I
said
kept going.
you said 550, 50.
Yes,
50. Yeah.
yes.
So listeners, I've had a chat with Diane, and I know that it was 50, not 15, but I'm just kind of underlining that in case it passed you by. 50 years. That's like,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes.
So clearly it isn't about you. It's about us. It's about them. It's about other adoptees, and
Yes,
it's about well, have you ever seen the Blues Brothers?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So do you remember what their catchphrase was?
Oh gosh, no, it's not coming to me at this moment. Refresh
Yeah.
my memory.
We're on a mission from God.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah. So you literally are on a mission from God too.
I am. A friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, um, called it my ministry. And I had to think about that for a minute, the word ministry. And I said, well, I'm not ordained. She says, oh, yeah, you are. You may be ordained by God in that sense. But yeah, this is your ministry. You are helping other adoptees see another side of adoption and what it's like to find your biological family, and the pitfalls that they may encounter. And it's a story about love as well, and that good things can prevail.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of a ministry for me. It's kind of turned into that, which is something I never dreamed possible. I've never really thought of myself in that context before, but yeah, I've rolled up my sleeves and took this on, and glad to do it.
Yeah.
Glad I'm doing it.
But maybe the higher power saw you that way, right?
I think so. I really do. It's like something's going on there. Sometimes I don't really understand what the message means, and just kind of take it in, and then later it'll hit me. Okay, I'm supposed to be doing this. Okay,
Yeah.
great. But that's exactly what happened when the book was published. All these doors started opening for me, and it was just very clear that I was just going to keep pressing on. I was going to be listening to the messages that I was receiving from God, and pay attention and obey.
Yeah. So this seems to me like has given great. It seems to me like it's given great meaning to meaning to your life, right?
Yes, it has. It certainly has. Um, One thing that I never dreamed I would be doing would be speaking to people in public. And becoming a speaker has just really changed my life. And I get to, not only tell and give a message of faith, hope, and perseverance, but I also receive back many wonderful messages from other people that I meet and have asked me questions and have followed me through this journey as well. And it's been incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the stuff that you're talking about here isn't really common culturally, is it? I don't know. Maybe it's just the UK. I don't know. I like the
Well, I have to agree with you. It may not be, but when you look at the whole picture and you kind of boil it down, yes, I'm an adoptee, and I was blessed to find my biological family, which has truly helped me in my whole uh, mental state, my whole being as a person walking around in this earth. It's helped me. It's helped my kids. It's helped my grandchildren. And I'm a lot happier person now that I have these questions that have been answered, that I've been looking to get answered for many, many years.
yeah,
So yeah, that's kind of a cool thing.
yeah. Two, an image has popped into my head of, and this is a mass oversimplification, right? So the image,
Okay.
the pictures that have popped into my head is the picture of you going going out into the world, being a speaker, after being, shall we say, in the trenches on the search journey for 50 years, and then having these revelations, finding your biological birth family, and then going out into the world and uh, people inviting you, like me, right? People
Right.
invite, but people inviting you, and you're pushing on other doors, and those doors opening. So on one point, and it's not about you, and then I'm thinking about a lonely adoptee, um, sitting. For some reason, I'm thinking about a teenager here, really, because teenagers get sent to their room or end up in the room, or listening to. I don't. Do you remember a band called the Smiths? A
Yeah.
British band, yeah. So it's very moany, miserable kind of stuff. And there's another guy from a different generation who I'm trying to think of at the moment. It'll come to me. So I'm thinking about somebody locked away in the bedroom, um, not wanting to engage with people, listening to maudlin music, including the Smiths, locked off from society. Uh, uh, Tumbling further and further into kind of morose feelings. Why me? Why did this happen to me? Why am I suffering this trauma? And those two images kind of popping into my head in terms of what does it what's the difference? What's the difference that makes the difference? What's the thing that catalyzes you to go out and catalyze you to go out there and find the answers, and then once you've found the answers, share your stuff with the world? What's the catalyst for all that stuff?
Well, it's the giving and sharing of information and the fellowship that really is something that I really love and enjoy. It kind of trips my trigger. If it, like I'll go back to what I said a few minutes ago, that if I can inspire one person to just keep going. And I'm not a search angel. I'm not really good at, you know, pulling up somebody's DNA and saying, okay, this is your biological family, and doing all that digging. I leave that up to the professionals and the search angels and all those people that are those people are the gifts from God on this earth that can help people. And if that teenager sitting in that lonely room can come out, can open that door and walk through that door and ask for help, that would be stepping out on faith. You know, he would be stepping out into faith and asking for help, and there's nowhere to go but up from there, hopefully.
Yeah. I heard a great phrase on a podcast this morning, and it was decoupling. And he used it. I can't remember what sense the guy used it on, but the idea that came to me was decoupling from our trauma.
Right.
And you're the first person I've had chance to riff about this, to chat about this.
Okay.
Does that make any sense? Decoupling. I'm thinking of that lonely, traumatized person, right?
Right.
Tuning into the podcast because he or she sees that word faith, or the word hope, or the word perseverance. Probably the faith or hope first, right? And I'm thinking, how does that decoupling from our trauma happen?
Do you think that it's because you get to a point where maybe you feel that I can't do this by myself, I need help? I'm tired of feeling like this, and they want to become a more active person and get out and get out and enjoy life. But
I'm thinking ahead. I'm thinking before that, right? So it kind of leads into the hope question, right? So I'll talk about myself for a minute here, right? So I had everybody's a trauma kind of looks different, feels different. It's all different, right? Everybody's trauma. I didn't really feel primarily wounded until I read The Primal Wound. Yeah, and I had some. I didn't think that I was good enough at business, but that was something I could work on. Okay, but in terms of, okay, well, if I'm not good enough, if I'm stuck with the primal wound, if I'm primarily wounded, I'm kind of stuck with that. I can't. I'll just have to cope. I was coupled at that point. I was coupled with my trauma until, and so for me, and until some months later, and my life went from a kind of 8 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10, maybe. I didn't hit rock bottom. But my life had dipped a little bit when I believed I was primarily wounded, because I'm quite susceptible and sensitive. So I kind of like, and I was raised very honest. So I tend to believe stuff, right? I tend to believe stuff. So this Nancy Verrier, seems an authoritative author. Seems to know what she's talking about, using all these scientific terms, and so I was coupled to my trauma, albeit the trauma was pretty mild compared to a lot of cases that we see. But like how do we uncouple? How do we uncouple? Because uncouple from the trauma, because that kind of relates to hope to me.
That's a great question, Simon. Do you think that it could go back to faith, whatever um, higher
Yeah,
power you believe in?
yeah, I definitely, yeah. I think it's seeing something. So it might be seeing light at the end of the tunnel. Okay. So that light at the end of the tunnel could be God for sure, for definitely. Yeah, definitely. It could also be just hearing a podcast when somebody's talking about that light at the end of the tunnel, and they might say, "Oh, I thought I thought I was stuck with my trauma. I thought my trauma was me."
No, they're not stuck in the trauma. They can get help. It's kind of almost like how a caterpillar will turn into a butterfly. And you hold that butterfly in your hand and you see that butterfly fly away. That image to me would suit that person, that young person that is holed up in their room day after day because of their trauma. But if they could see past, if they could see forward a little bit and just believe that they could be that butterfly, a beautiful butterfly, and spread their wings, and hopefully that would help them understand their trauma and maybe move forward.
Yeah, I there's understanding the trauma, yes, and for sure, and at a at a at a at a well, I'm not sure what the word is. The way I kind of see it, there's another level to it, at a more profound level, seeing that we understanding that we are not our trauma.
Right.
Now, does that? I mean, so my background's publishing, and I'm used to playing with words,
Mhm.
and to me, I can't tell whether that distinction is really subtle or huge. To me, for you, right? Well, one of the reasons I can't see is because listeners, we had a problem with the internet connection. So normally I have these conversations and with the video on, right? But today we've switched the video off so we can use the audio. So I can't see whether that distinction is landing for Diane or not. So let me take another go at it again, right? There's
Okay.
understanding our trauma and understanding that we are not our trauma.
Correct. I'm not going to let my trauma define who I am. I learned from it. I learned a lot from it, but I just choose to take what I've learned from it and be positive and use it to help someone else.
Yeah. So now I'm going to go into me. I'm going to go into my diamond metaphor. Did I share my diamond metaphor with you?
No, you did not. No.
Okay. So obviously, listeners, this is audio, right? Not video.
Yes.
But Diane can't see me either, so I'm going to have to describe it to her, right? So, Diane, imagine and apologies, listeners, if you've heard it before, but kind of not, because it might, I might say it slightly differently this time, and it might land for you, okay? Because this stuff is stuff that we need to see, and understanding is not a yes no thing. Understanding is having, it has depth. So it's a bit like learning French, right? You can know enough French to be able to order a beer, or you can know enough French to be able to have a discussion like this in French. And so it has infinite depth. Understanding of who we are has as much depth and as understanding a language, right? So Diane, I want you to imagine a clenched fist.
Okay.
Well, why didn't you do it? Why didn't you clench your fist?
Okay.
Clench your fist, right? Clench your fist. Clench it so so hard that you can almost, you're white knuckling it.
Yeah.
You see white knuckle, right? Okay.
Yep.
So my trauma manifested as anger. Okay, so and when we're angry, we punch people.
Yeah.
And we punch people
feel like you want to.
Sorry?
Or feel like you want to.
Or feel like you want to do, yeah. Okay. And then something kicks in and which stops us, right? So the clenched fist is a metaphor for our trauma and our anger. So for me, it was, she didn't love me enough, my birth mother. She didn't love me enough to keep me, and lots of swear words and right? And anger towards her. Okay, so that's the trauma. Now, I'm doing this, and I'm opening my fingers to the natural position of the hand, which is an open palm, right? It's not natural for us to have a clenched fist. It's not natural. It's not innate in us. Trauma is not innate in us, I don't believe. Some people will disagree with me. And when I've opened my fist, I've seen a beautiful glass diamond. And that's who we are. We're perfect, we're shiny, the lights bouncing off the different faces of this glass diamond, and this is the perfection of who we are underneath the trauma in our hearts. And seeing that for ourselves, for me, is decoupling from our trauma, because it's understanding that we are not our trauma. It's not a choice. It's not a choice. You talked about my trauma isn't going to define me. I chose not to. My trauma isn't going to define me. No, this isn't a choice. This is the truth.
Right.
We are not our trauma.
No, I'm not my trauma. I am not my trauma, but I learned from it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure. So we've done faith, hope. Where was that another message from God in terms of hope? Was hope what kept you going for those 50 years?
Oh,
what does hope mean to you?
Yes, actually, in the last, I started working with a search angel, and I worked with her for 4.5 years. She told me that I was the toughest case she had ever had. And she just kept going on and on and on, and did an amazing job. And I hoped that she could help me. I hoped I would find my biological family with her help. And I took a break at one point because I was just emotionally exhausted. But all during that period, that 2 week period when I took a break, because that's, God, I really feel that God stepped in and said, it's time that the questions that I have be revealed. And I took that break around Christmas time in 2018. But I kept hoping maybe something will happen. Who knows? And my search angel would not give up. She never gave up. And then finally, she called me with answers for what I was looking for. And she said, I know who your family is. And she said, do you want to know? And I said, of course I do. And that started another part of hope. Is this the right family? And there's only one way to find out, and that's to call or to make contact. And long story short, yes, it was the right family, and we did connect. And that was a pretty stressful time in my life, is choosing when to make that call and hoping that it was the right person to start a conversation with. That anybody that's ever reunited with someone, it's the toughest conversation you're ever going to have in your life, and you hope it goes well, and you hope it's right, and you hope that I was hoping that it would touch their hearts, and you're hoping to be accepted, and you're hoping that you want to meet them. And, how are you going to do that when you live 700 miles away? And, all of these factors came into it. And, and faith played a part of it too. So without hope, you've got nothing. You really have nothing.
Were the times on the search that you lost hope?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I did lose hope. I just said, I can't do this. I looked at my husband. I said, I can't do this anymore. This is too hard.
Yeah.
And it was, but something on the inside drove me to move forward. Kind of like, okay, you're starting to give up hope, Diane. Give it, don't give this a rest. Fight this. You got this. Keep going. And I kind of motivated my own self, I guess you could say. But and that was really hard. That was, you have some soul wrenching thoughts going through your head. It's just really tough. And then one day it happens, and it's like, did this really just happen? Did I really just talk to one of my sisters?
Yeah.
That's when all those doubts that you have, you just got to throw them out the window, because this is real. This just really happened.
What strikes me, I asked you the question, but it would be absolutely, totally unrealistic to have a 50-year search when the hope, without moments of losing hope.
Well, I really started to ask questions and start when I was about the age of 15 or 16, and I got absolutely no help. And you got to kind of remember too, we didn't have the resources at our fingertips back in the 70s that we have today. A lot of people had, would use a family Bible, or they had all of these city directories and all of this stuff, but we didn't have the technology back then that we have today that can make it a whole lot easier to get the answers that you're looking for. So as you're going along in your life, my life just happened. I got married, I had 2 kids, I was working, and life just happened. And then both my adoptive parents died. My mother about 13 years ago, and my father 15 years ago. And it was at that point when my mother passed away that my adoptive sister and I looked at each other and said, hey, as we're going through our parents' belongings, let's see if we can't find any adoption records. And we tore the house apart looking for them, and we never did find anything. And that was kind of disappointing. I don't know if they gave them to somebody else to keep or whether they destroyed them after a while, but it just, we didn't find anything. And then that's when things really started to change in the technology of DNA, was these home DNA tests like Ancestry.com. You spit in a tube and you send it back and you get results that are just amazing.
Yeah.
So
I've just
that
sent
kind
mine
of,
off. I've just sent
yeah.
mine off.
Oh, good for you. I'm glad you did it. Good.
Yeah. Yeah, on the back of one of the conversations I had for the podcast, actually. Yeah, I mean, I did my search, but like you, I at one stage unlike you, I didn't start searching till much later. So I don't think I started searching till I was, I don't know, late 40s. And I got my I guess it was, people call it the original birth certificate. It didn't look like that to me, but it had my birth mother's name on it and had the name that she gave me, which was David Anthony Flower, and that was enough for me at that time. And then, and so I didn't pursue anything further. And then about, I don't know how much later, a few months later, I was in a therapist room, and I had a meltdown, and I just decided I'm not going to let this fear in inverted commas of a second rejection, again in inverted commas, from my birth mother. I'm not going to let this fear what should we say?
I totally understand what you're saying, because it's like being relinquished all over again and dealing with that and processing that through your mind. It's just like that.
Yeah. Well, what actually happened, and I've talked about this briefly on another couple of podcasts, but so sorry if you've heard this before, listeners, but if you haven't, basically the idea of my birth mother outside the door of the therapist's office popped into my head, and I went, and she was, I don't know, I can't remember exactly what she was doing in the picture in my head, but it was essentially rejecting me, sending me away, and I went kind of white with fear, and then red with anger that I'm not going to let this fear hold me back. I'm not going to be. I'm not. I guess, I mean, you could call that was a moment of faith, a moment of a higher power. I'm bigger. I'm bigger than my fear.
Yes.
Or I'm not going to be smaller than my fear. Probably that was more like it. And so I started, and unfortunately, I found out that she died. However, so the DNA test really is just to see if find out a little bit more, and maybe there's some cousins out there, or yeah, well, I do know there's some cousins out there, but I haven't followed through with my uncle about my biological uncle about asking them. Anyway, let's get back to the subject. So yeah, it would be totally nuts to figure that in a 50-year journey there wouldn't be moments of losing hope, and I guess that's when the faith comes back in and its role. The other thing that occurs to me, Diane, is how tricky it was, because obviously there was no internet in the early years of the search, and no DNA in the early years of the search, but you didn't call it faith, hope, perseverance, and hard work, did you? Do you know what I mean?
No, I did not.
You didn't. This is, you didn't put or strategies or anything like that. It's the faith, the hope, and the perseverance that do the hard lifting. And I guess did it start with curiosity?
Well, I guess you could say I did. I was told at a very early age, I think I was around the age of 5 years old, that I was adopted, that I was special, and that they chose me. And I didn't think anything of it. And it was later when all of these strange feelings started surfacing that I couldn't answer, or nobody else could answer them either. It was like sitting around the dinner table at night looking at my family. I love them. I love them all, but I sure don't look like them.
Yeah.
You know, I had this tugging at my heart about large families, and I was somehow drawn to making friends with large families. I married someone that had a large family, and I always thought that was very special to have a large family.
Yeah.
But you can't, you can't. I was a kid, you can't do anything. Your resources are not available to you. And, asking questions, and that didn't go well, asking my mother questions. And she remained tight-lipped. I mean, the subject was closed in her mind. But there was always felt that there was something else she wanted to tell me, but was too afraid to tell me. And you got to remember, about that point, when I was asking those questions, I was like 15, 16 years old, and confronting my mom in what I thought would be a safe way to do it is just sit at the kitchen table and have a conversation and say, Mom, I love you, but can you tell me anything about my biological family? And she refused to do it. All during my teen years, and when I had children, going to the doctor's office was always kind of a nightmare for me, because of I couldn't check any boxes on their forms. Like, do you have a family history of cancer? Do you have a family history of diabetes, or lung issues, or heart issues, or all those kind of medical questions? I couldn't answer them because I didn't know, and that bothered me. And you have to go into the doctor and say, I'm sorry, I couldn't answer these questions. And I would say very quietly, I'm adopted, so I don't know. And I was kind of embarrassed. I shouldn't have been, but I was. And I kind of outgrew that later on, but I feel that it's very important for any adoptee to know any family medical history. I feel it's our right, that we deserve to have those answers
Yeah.
because it will help us make better choices in not only our lives, but in the lives of our children.
Yeah. You used a word there that really intrigued me. You said outgrow. You outgrew something. What was it that you outgrew?
I outgrew the fact that I would get embarrassed going to the doctor's office, not being able to answer questions
Yeah.
about family medical history.
Yeah. I think I said, as I mentioned earlier on, because I was in publishing for a while, I never really thought of myself as fascinated by words, but I guess I am to some extent. But outgrowing something, it's the same as being bigger than it, isn't it?
Yeah,
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 um, so a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, talks about his fear of public speaking, right? And he's probably in his 70s now, early 60s, 70s. But he uses like British toilet humor. So he describes how afraid he is of public speaking by talking about how many times he's been to the toilet before he came on stage, right? But he says his message is bigger than his fear.
yeah. That is a big statement. I love that.
So
That's true.
yeah, you outgrew your embarrassment. Um, the addict guy that I was talking about earlier on, he outgrew his addiction. Outgrowing is really good. Well, it's back to hope, isn't it? The hope that
Yeah.
we can outgrow our trauma, maybe, or that we can, I talked about decoupling from our trauma. Outgrow our trauma might be another way of looking at it. Like I guess I'm trying to throw these different ways out of seeing it, because they'll different ways of seeing it will land. So the perseverance piece, right? So we've done faith, we've done hope, we've done perseverance. Perseverance seems to me to be one of the most powerful and yet under talked about things.
I certainly agree.
Because what can you
I
say about it?
I got a lot to say about it.
Oh, great.
I'm never short for words. Perseverance, it's probably, if I had to pick what was my favorite word in the title, is it faith, is it hope, or is it perseverance? I got to go with perseverance. Yeah, I really did persevere. I kept going. Can you tell me how many people would keep going after 50 years of searching? I'll bet there's not a lot of people that would. Some would say, "Oh, this is just too much. I can't do this. It's been so many years and I found nothing. It's just not going to happen for me." Well, yeah, I can understand that. However, and I may have felt like that, but I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. But when it gets down to the nuts and bolts for me, this word has a very special meaning to me. And it was a word that my biological father used the first time we met. Oh, it was amazing. It was snowing. It was in January. It's in upstate New York, and it was snowing and it was cold. And um, I was to meet my biological father for the first time at his home. And it was a magical moment of my life when I had my adoptive sister with me. She was with me. She was holding my hand, and we were standing at the front door before we were not going to knock on the door. And she looked at me and she says, "You've got this. This is it. This is what you've been waiting for." And she was holding my hand, and I said, "Don't let go of my hand." So we go through the door. I've still got my sister's hand, and I'm looking around in the room, and there was so many people in that room. I knew some of them. My sisters were in the room. There was some other people who I didn't know, but that's okay. And then it was just like magic that my father comes into the room. He enters from another door, and it's almost like things got very, very quiet in the room, and people parted. And my father was walking towards me, and I let go of my sister's hand, and I walked towards my father. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I look like my dad. Wow, this is pretty cool. And I looked at him, and I was crying, and he was crying. And he said, "I have thought about you every day. I am so thankful you persevered in finding me." Well, that was just a very pivotal moment in my life. And that's why I chose to use that word perseverance in my title, because he was looking for me, I was looking for him, and we didn't give up.
Yeah. There's not a lot I can say to that, Diane.
Sorry. Not sorry.
No,
Yeah,
that's a good
the,
thing. That's a
it,
good thing, right?
it was it that whenever I hear that word persevering, perseverance, I picture that moment that I met my dad,
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
and it's a magical word to me.
And I can get a glimpse. I'm getting a glimpse of why with the beautiful story behind it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it just holds a big space in my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably a good place to bring it in. As always, listeners, I encourage you to check out the show notes for links to our guests' websites, socials, their books. If they've written a book, clearly such a great book like Diane. Is there anything else that I've not asked you that you would like to share, Diane?
Well, I have to tell you this. It's today is November the 17th, and November here in the United States, it's National Adoption Awareness Month, which is a month that we set aside to increase adoption awareness and bring attention to the need of adoptive families. This is a very important month to me, and very excited about it. It was actually became popular when President Bill Clinton proclaimed it National Adoption Month in 1995. So there's a lot of activities, and you can probably check out your local areas to see what's going on with that. But right now, Simon, I want to give you a big number. I researched this a little bit. There is approximately 140 million children in the world between the ages of 0 to 18 that are available for adoption. That's quite a big number.
Huge.
And I want you to think about this too, okay? Just to kind of bring this to something familiar with you. Wembley Stadium in London holds about 90,000 people. Is that correct, you think?
Yeah-ish, yeah, for sure.
Okay. If you could fill Wembley Stadium 1,555 times with the number of children that are waiting to be adopted.
Wow.
That's a big number.
That's a big number.
That's a big, but it doesn't matter where you are in this world. All of these kids have one thing in common. They're just waiting for their forever families and to be loved.
Yeah.
So if you are thinking about adoption, don't wait any longer. Do it. They're waiting.
Thank you, Diane. Big words, big heart, big conversation. I've loved it. I hope you've loved it too, listeners.
I do. I have enjoyed this very much, Simon.
Oh, and listeners, I ask people, I never ask this, and I always forget, right? Can you rate us, like us on your podcast platform, and hopefully more adoptees and adopted parents will find the show. So thank you, listeners. We'll speak to you again very soon. Bye-bye.